ching me to Tram re rab ling shin ye de gen pa de Sangye shindo me te o wage Roku nam dak shing la che pa shoyon ten kun ki shi kyu trin chen Jesu shin ten pa lam ke sawaru Lek patong nebe patu mai Kupa chen po ten pa chin ke lo idam guru ratna mandala kam niryatayame 모두 작시당 이무광계 내루당아당 대신 이기경 딕바닥에 게바치치 바데다담체 야게소소샤 적주겔와 근당상계 세랑엘 남당 롭당 미롭당 조와 근게 소남강라 양대다 근게 제수닥예랑 강남 척추 직된종 혼매 닭장축 림파 상계 마착니 건포대락 닭의 땀체 라골로라나 네바코와코 나겐다둔 강셰데다 라드로와쿠다 벤싱데웨체 켈파싱게 눈예쇼파 양다게 델모 랍자소와게 작셀와당 조징샤파 단제수이랑 구싱소와예 개와중세 다게지사 바담제다게 장축칠ngo. We will now do a short mandala offering. We will now do a long life prayer for Kyabje Dakpo Lama Rinpoche. It's on page 199. O gel kun trin le shom chal tak pe kam nam yik ning po min pe sen pe ga chi me do je la mo tare me ta che yung o do pe gelek so Cham se kien pa ge pe lek she yang de chen cha gya ba we dor je lu dro ke ning je ro so ke gu nyen pel den la ma chok la so wa de Tende nang wadra we ta kop tu tup su ni nang tro we chare kyang kun mong tru ko shom ke kadrin chen da me che ke ni ma shap ten cho Tup su rang ki sung we shi du ge bak yo che pe den ni sik pe dun ji shin pel we kun yon dik tu kong pam ze rik pe pa wo shap ten cho Du si cha bep chu la yi wang ga shi gu pa ta che men pe cho de top mig dang ka po che ge pe sung me ma we da wa shap ten cho Ti muk le gyal shi we chok tun pe che wa shi den lam la tri we su Nyal top kyo wa pang pe se chen ge Dom ke shen yen chen po shak ten sho Lu me la ma ye dam ka dro tang ten sung dam chen gyat so che pe top dak chak mo tang lak sam tak pe tu mun pe de True Yogi. Please turn to page 214. We will now offer the long mandala offering to request the teaching. Shinkambu Washo Om Benza Bhumi Aho Wanchen Sage Sashi Om Benza Reke Aho Chichari Ko Yoge Goe Usuri Gelpore Rap Shaluk Polo Zambuling No Alancha Jang Raminyen Ludang lupa ngayap dan ngayap zen yoden tang lam chok tro draminyen tan draminyen geda rempoche ryo pasam geshing dojo ba mamo paye loto korlo rempoche norbu rempoche sunmo rempoche lompo rempoche Langpo Rinpoche, Tacho Rinpoche, Mapo Rinpoche, Tachen Pui Bumpa, Gek Ma, Trenwa Ma, Luma Gama, Metok Ma, Dubo Ma, Naksa Ma, Dricha Ma, Nye Ma Dawa Rinpoche, Du, Chole Nampa Gelwe Gelsen, Usulata miye peljo punsum sopa masangwa me padita junchin sawa tang yupa chepe peldet lama dampa nangda ke patu yang jesun geshi lo sang palba pel sang po shel ngane chang chub lam ke rimpe sung cho sap mo su she we chu su shin kam u wa ge o tu je dro we dundu she su so she ne jinge lap tu so sashi ki ju shi talk from Republic ni Pade Sange Shito Me Te Wange Doku Se Pa Do Pa. Min, the katas are on the table. Min. Oh, Jesun lama tampa nam ke chokala kien se ne jita duche mala sabye Chapa Abdu Sol Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryataya Me. It's on tomorrow or today. Oh, okay. Okay. We will recite the long life for all masters, which is on page 195. Oh, gang la tena sidang shiwai chik pa le dro chok dang tun mongi ngo dru ma lu de lak so za pe ngo gyu la ma nam la so wa de Dam chö te pe sa we la ma nam ku se kel gya ten pa jin ge lok gang ri dang zin ko lo dom pa dang chi me la mo chom den se pak me Nam pa gyel ma yi shin kor lo so se yi la shok nam la so wa de dam cho te pe sa we la ma nam ku se kel gya ten pa jin ge lo sang wa du pa kor lo dom pa dang Dor je jig je du kor kya dor je kor lo chen po ta chok ro pa so yi dam la shok nam la so wa de dam cho to pe sa we la ma dam ku se kel ya ten pa zin ye lo gyel wa rik nga sang ya pa won dun de shek che ge kel sang nam dren tong sang ge so nga mi tru pa la so Zo pe sang ge nam la so wa de Dam cho te pe sa we la ma nam Ku se gel gya ten pa jin ge lo. Nye se ge dang ye she la ma dang. U ki tok dang mon lam lo dro dang. Wang po shi dang kyab dro la sok pa. Jang chup sem pe shok la so wa de. Dam chö te pe sa we la ma nam. Ku se kyel gya ten pa jin ge lo. Pa pa rang ge chen po chu ni dang. Dra chom ne ten chu dru la so pa. Lob dang mi lob nyen to rang gel gi. Shok chok ge du nam la so wa de. Dam chö te pe sa we la ma nam. Ku se kyel gya ten pa jin ge lo. Hu li la so ne chok nye shi na. Tru pe ku yi dro we don ze pa. Tu pe dum bu rap tu ma la so. Pa wo ka dro shok la so wa de. Dam chö te pe sa we la ma nam. Ku se kyel gya ten pa jin ge lo. Nyur ze gon po le shin mak zor ma. Gur gun shel shi dur da jaro sen. Nam to se sok dam pe chö kyong we. Ye she sung ma nam la so wa de. Dam chö te pe sa we la ma nam. Ku se kyel gya ten pa jin ge lo. De ta se chik sol de ta jangi. Leg drang kon cho nyin je jin lap ke. La me ku se cha che mon pe bu. Ten zom ze trin pe shel she par sho. Con chok rin chen nam sum jin lap dang. Chö nyi gyu dre lu wa me pe tu. Je sun la ma nge shin ze sung ne. Tu sang gong pe ja ta chin sho. We will recite the refuge before listening to the Dharma. Please turn to page 213.
sì. Adesso un giorno un giorno vuole istikhaja chegiro. Ada rimaranzo de ane kya pe de jinje yuju mo yi.
Shall I say the refuge to Molai dulu?
Mari, la sai ma me. Sujung gudu uma zungale yang ati istikhaja chegiro. What is it? Sungju unju manang malaya siro. Ane chida tarin dendege. Ane samado je nyam dendege zogju juade. Ajam bi ka buju. Ane samalaya sambi. Yachitele shuguyes. What is it?
So this is just before we are about to start. Just before about to start. perhaps we start with just a few words first. So for example, the fact that we are coming here today for this session is very fortunate. And the first thing to say that is Tashi Delek to you all. This is before we start the session.
아, 안에 다른데로 안에 이제 비싸. 이 말이면 오케이. 예, 오케이. 안에 다른데 말이셔야 가담 터지시는 최소를 안에 자야지 다른 테마 시부디도 차대요 그래서 안에 다리 된르게 안에 배지 테마 시부디 된르 자야 중바대 하장기 가부 중이야 안에 결혼도 두야디 하장기 가부 중 안에 지다조 디 안에 가발라 되는 중거리 시디삼바 안에 배 야지다 올라마를 못 치기다 배지 문에 투지 냐데 냐직 때네 안 되는 거가 중거지레스 되는게 제야다 안에 되는게 안에 최셔야 녀야 거가 말아도 상관되는 중바대 안에 자주림 지기 안에 투지 진압을 되는 중거리레스.
So this is something to say before we all start. Just we take a minute, like a preparation before the session. And the things that to be said here is, first of all, we feel very glad. Please feel very glad. Why? Because all of this session can happen due to the blessing and the kindness of Kyabje Tapolama Rinpoche. The fact that this session is happening now, the one who is about to give the session and the one who is listening, the fact that we can gather together now is due to the kindness and the blessing of Kyabje Tapolama Rinpoche.
세상하다 다리 말아줘 안에 가시 지야기다 배지 뒤지디 다 디리네 송다 안에 나와디 세니 시작 집어줬다 맞아 뒤지들이 지어라 안에 디나 로레야 다 말아줘 되게 고가베 요야디 다기 쇼반노지다 저저림 지 투지 진압라 되는 이마 송자디 안에 까티 텐신비 고네 안에 도지 야부지 세야 안에 저위스.
So for this session, for this year, it happened to be the 4th year of visit of my visit here, the 4th year. And for this year, we are going to be together from today starting until the 21st of December. So this is the very opportunity that I would like to take for us all to remember the kindness of Kyabje Tapo Lama Rinpoche. It is due to his kindness, to his blessing, that we are here to be able to, the one who is going to explain is going to explain, the one who is listening is going to listen well. So this is our hope together. This is going to be well due to his kindness and blessing.
나들이 마순사 단데 무엇을 여바다 무엇을 매바 안에 다 예간을 생기만 보여로 안에 참말라야 참비시고요스.
And of course, the sessions will cover the one who are here physically and the one who are here not physically but listening also through the internet. So for all of you, all of us, very good greetings for you all.
Sanje cheda soje chonang lo janjo bado dane kyabso Ake cheche debe tonang je no la benje sanje no ga Sanje cheda soje chonang lo janjo bado dane kyabso Ake cheche debe tonang je no la benje sanje no ga Sanje cheda soje chonang lo janjo bado dane kyabso Ake cheche debe tonang je no la benje sanje no ga La da la me da me je ong bo da ja je la zo chi je la je wa na san je zong ba da tu je we de we je wa de da je da be chin je ne de je ha ye ge da lu da me je du mo da me je nam da do ku je da nam jin za wa ham je ge do da ge je de do wa lu je ba jiang men la ma zong ba ba xian de song le ye se lo 대외 된데 이些놀래라 된다니 봐 다른 상식 니가 진라 나왜 로단다 순대 3년 지대 자와고 빈바 창화신도 또주네 인제군도 닝보 렘버 제전라메 냠네 대다데 하데 체전 디시 장체로 시에송바 따라서로 다디 된다데 가르송 거요레서나 단당하랑 되다 베지 대외 된 밀리림보치 디 토바데 로 아장기다 이시유노벌을 하바레스 금제 가르레스 디자마 이시유노버시야데 나라즈 세디 유bun기 동이세야 담마도 개와치마 펜젤레야 안에지 펜도 요버지 마레스 이나야 나라즈 된주기 때미니 림보치 데라 때네 세디다 치마 안에 타레 타바다 탐지케베 고바 두바이네 두투야게 누바지 요리지 데네이 바송자 안에 대외 된데 이시기 노발을 하바레스야 금제와 두스리스.
So there is a one verse of advice given by Jerimpoche, the Losang Drakpa, Jerimpoche Songkapa, in which he says the following verse within the lines of experience. This life with freedom is superior to a wish-granting gem, but it is as if you have attained it just this once. It is difficult to achieve, easily destroyed, like a flash of lightning in the sky. Reflecting upon this and aware that all worldly activities are as vain as winnowing chaff, day and night strive to take full advantage of it. And Jerimpoche conclude by saying, I, the yogi, have practiced in this way. You who aspire to liberation, do the same. So basically, Jerimpoche is advising by saying that the freedom and fortune that we have now as a human rebirth, not just a regular human rebirth, but a precious human rebirth, is said to be superior, to be more beneficial compared to a wish-granting gem. And what is the reason? The reason simply because if suppose someone has a wish-granting gem, the most that this gem can give beneficial is to cure the poverty. Someone being poor, then the wish-granting gem can solve the situation of being poor, but that's it for this life and this life only. However, if someone who has a precious human rebirth with freedom and fortune, it can cure or solve the problem of this life and then next life. Furthermore, the precious human rebirth can also grant someone wish to achieve liberation, and furthermore, for the state of enlightenment itself. This is the power of the potentiality that carries upon in the precious human rebirth. And it's for this very reason, precious human rebirth with freedom and fortune is more superior compared to a wish-granting gem.
다든데기 안에 대주기 때 밀리림보체 짜침보디 다베 양내 양도 다베지 된데 용야 여비는 다 지금 디고요레스 이나야 된데 말이에서 하장그 공부치리스 렌지 짬세다 정말 직zam레스 정말 직zam시야 되게 된다 가르레스도 참 하장그 공부인비 경제레스 된데 양내 양도 용야 말이스 된다니와 다리 잠시 인시야 된다 어디리.
And the fact that the precious human rebirth One, two, three. Is it better, this one? No, sorry. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Is it okay with this one? I can hear myself here. So this mic is supposed to go all around the building, yeah, this room. Is it better? 1, 2, 3, the three principal qualities of the path by J. Tsongkhapa testing. So the second line, when you say that, but it is as if you have attained it just this once. So for the preciousness of the precious human rebirth and the potentiality that carry within this human life, if we could attain this kind of life again and again and again in the future, then it doesn't really becomes a big deal for us in order to realize the potentiality, because there is a so-called a chance to achieve this kind of a potentiality again and again. However, it is not so. The fact that we have this body now, this is our only chance. So Jen Rinpoche basically saying, this is your only chance when he says, but it is as if you have attained it just this once, one time. It's only one that you have, making it very precious. So this is the meaning of the second line from this verse.
他点的大别是点就一点，他将个念高啊就念不来的，那样点的念高的点就一点的，他就老东大忙不的，老西大忙不的，还有别那他这个的是，那样点的要嘛的是咯，俺那他将个几个拉不，买不起要个，俺那边来拉不西路，别的车钱呢，南北老难行的是咯，南北老难行，几个呀，他只要点的几的是。 대양 네바요 말에서 가두치다 마치 네바메바 된리지리스 어디서 모르다 네가 지글라 남벨로단다스.
And then the fact that this human rebirth is very precious, at the same time, this is very difficult to attain and easily destroyed like a flash of lightning in the sky. So once we have attained this human life, if we could keep it for like thousands of years, or 10,000s of years, then we have those years, like thousands or 10,000 and etc. But we don't have those kind of years. In fact, what we have now is a very fragile life. This is why Jen Rinpoche said, this is the one that is difficult to achieve. You have only this one time and it's easily destroyed. Even as we speak now, our human body is destroyed by himself moment by moment. And then for this very reason, it is difficult to achieve, easily destroyed. It's like a flash of lightning in the sky. We don't have to keep this body a very long time. It's very short life we have here, as if like a flash of lightning in the sky. It's very short. It's very brief.
인데인 바순자 대다외다 안에 대주기 때문에 rinpoche 마라제 배제하고 지단이로 안에 녀가와다 지글라에 안에 되는데 야보지 상에 마라제 지den기 자와 님부 매가들려야 안에 셔라 안에 현자 첨부 지기요 말에서 디수머리.
The briefness of this life, therefore, is also not certain. There is no one that can tell when he will go from this life. So he cannot tell the time, he cannot tell the situation, and it's very brief. And then the fact that this is very difficult to achieve, easily destroy and carry great potentiality, it comes to one conclusion: we have to utilize it now. So by remembering this life is very difficult to achieve, it is easily destroyed, it is a one-time opportunity, so we have to utilize it now. And the Je Rinpoche also will give a very important reminder, saying that with this precious human life, do not waste it by doing worldly activities. So in the first, Je Rinpoche says, reflecting upon this and aware that all worldly activities are as vain as winnowing chaff.
제사 대답에다 지딩기 자와도서 안에 빼나 빌바 차와 나시 안에 배 닝부메바디 통보 그리에서 디수모도 와라 빌바 차와시도 또 교내에서다 말한저 지딩기 세디 또그 땅송라서 가리 인베이나야 안에 화장이 닝부메비 경제가리스디다 세디장만도 안에 저와 치마라 패배 안에 때단 나가지 메바이바 송자 안에 닝부메바 다 빌바 차와시 나시
So we are not to use this precious human life to achieve worldly activities. Why? Because the worldly activities are as vain as winnowing chaff. Why? Because there is no essence in it. It carries no meaning. Just like a winnowing chaff, if you know winnowing chaff, it's like the rice or the grain is empty inside. So if we use your precious human rebirth to chase for all worldly activities, at the very end, those worldly activities carry no meaning. Why? Because they only bring value for this life and this life only. It will not carry any meaning whatsoever for the next life. So Rinpoche is reminding, do not chase worldly activities. It is as vain as winnowing chaff.
다 디답이 더 닝부메바디 통하는 그 뒤주 간대지면은 인단 생 간대지면이나야 다 딘데기 세디 펜솔래야 안에 현자다 디 난유요 말이스 된다 디로.
And when should we recollecting or recalling the fact that the worldly activities does not carry any meaning? It is day and night, meaning at all time. At all time, we should remember, do not use this precious human life to chase worldly activities. This is when Rinpoche says, are as vain as winnowing chaff, day and night strive to take full advantage of it.
얘는 너데 민지군도 닝부 랭고그래 세디 숨고도 닝부 가를 랭고그래 세디 잠아 안에 세 니를 치만 개죠 세 치만을 팬베다 안에 만달에 세 치만을 팬베다 베지 저와지 인지민지 그거그래 닝부지 인지민지 랭고그래 딜래야데 가발라 되는 닝고래 세디 잠아 담배 추 코나라 되는 닝고요리 제가 닝부 랭고그래 최냠년난 고그래 세디 숨고요.
So when Rinpoche is saying day and night strive to take full advantage of it, and the question is how to do this. The way to take full advantage of this precious human life, day and night, is by make sure that we give the meaning to this precious human life. And the way to give meaning, the one way to do it is to practice the Dharma. At the end of the day, at the end of the life, the one that gives meaning to this human life is to practice the pure Dharma practice.
네임바 선장 정말로 송과가 전부 코란이야 냠네 들들랑 바 이세로 안에 친중민 뒤제 캐라조 이나야 안에 냠네 들들랑 고그리 지고그리 예세 뒤숨으로 지주연라면 냠네 대달제 내조를 얘기야 냠네 대달제 타데 계자듯이 장체로 오세요 오늘도 들으러
And Rinpoche himself has practiced in this way, being according to his advice. This is precisely the meaning from the last two lines from this verse in Lines of Experience. Rinpoche said, I, the yogi, have practiced in this way. You, or you who aspire to liberation, you all who aspire to liberation, do the same. Rinpoche said this.
다들 네임바 선자다 단데 디가고야 안에 세대를 차주요 말에 안에 왜 세대 체도 많이 봐 겨치만라 팬베 안에 인구직 랭고 그래 송주장바 안에 세대래야 내가 맞지 세대 체도 안에 베지 도고라서 봐들 세고고 말해서 들으송고요 말했어 디도다 저도 가르스는 세디 찍볼라 시에네 겨치만라 켜네 삼로 마당바 어디리지 맞지 변다 디리다 나도 망쳐와 저기 안에 베지 저와 지중 가르제비는 세디 찍고 삼로지 들리지 용거로 거라 레당고와 세야 되기 다베지 시가스나면도 랑시 들리지 용거로 다디 지주요 말에 세디다 치만이기는 치말라 다베 삼로지 당제다 세 치말라 야부지 고고 여비에는 세디라 야부지고로 야부지와 저발라 야부지야 그 텐제 고로 칼라 고레 두로 고레 강보 가리네 고로 디레기디 들리지고서 이나야 대화 디치고 그체도 많이 봐 어디 오시고 그래서 되는 소문에
So now that we have seen the verse and the advice given by Rinpoche and how do we connect with our present situation, so after we see what been advised by Rinpoche, does it mean that we do not have to do anything for this life? Does it mean that for this life, once we are here now, within this life, that we do not need to engage in any kind of activities, such as working or earning a living or doing worldly activities? Does it mean like that? Does it mean that we do not have to be attached to anything in this life? Certainly not. This is not what is meant by Jirenpoche. It is not certainly not that we are supposed to do. The meaning is that when we are said to give meaning to this life, is to not only to chase whatever activities that we are doing now and for this life and this life only. This is the meaning. Because as a newcomers, as a beginners on the path, the mind is not stable. So it's like our tendency to chase for this world and this world only. It is the nature of being a newcomers or beginners of the path. So this verse is reminding, do not chase for this life and this life only. You have to cover both this life and next life. This is very important. Why? If we say we want to achieve something beneficial for the next life, how are we going to achieve something beneficial for next life? It starts from now. There is no way we can achieve anything good in next life if there's nothing good that we achieve in this life. So it covers this life. But remember, as a newcomers, we are tend to be attached and chase only this life and this life only. We have to broaden the way of thinking and the vision to cover not just this life, but this life and the next life. And in order for next life to have a good condition, it starts from this life. In this life, we need a good food to sustain ourselves. We need a good clothing to sustain ourselves. We need a good housing to sustain ourselves. And by this good sustaining from ourselves, we do everything we could for this life, but for the sake of the next life. So it's covering both. This is the meaning of this verse.
레임바 손자 산제 중대디 랑이 안에 총 갸고리 레베 지구리 세델라 안에 말아줘 또 고고요레 고고요레 세디 말아줘 소아키고라 이 레베도 상마 지구거래서 손도와 이나야 다기 슈가 나시 말아줘 세디 코나 지구기 치도다 안에 레베지야 소라 총자야 소라 어디 지구요 말해서 떠나도 돈이 쉬비나 어디라리 얘기를
Yes. So in fact, basically, this is also the advice given by the Buddha himself. The Buddha encouraged the practitioner of Buddha Dharma to engage in activity such as doing business, go what you want to do in your earning your living, go to work, go to build your career. This is what the Buddha says. But the Buddhas remind us the same just what we just said before. Do not chase everything that you do now for this life and this life only. That's the point. Do not be a narrow-minded when you do things in this life and cover this life and this life only. You should be able to see wider. So whatever we are doing now, be it something that we do for our work, be it something that is covering earning a living, this is something we do in this life, but the meaning will be carried for the next life. This is the one that we should make sure.
너를 뒤니 쉬비나 말한저 자와 치중 간대지 제비나야 최다 퇴비 자와지 지규디 대저버리에서 뒤숨으로.
So in short, in brief, we can conclude that whatever we are doing now with this precious human life, whether it's something related to work or anything related to earning a living or just about any activity that we do in this life, we can specify that we can also make it in harmony, in align with the Dharma practice. So for the work we do and the earning living and activity, be it the one who is going along with the Dharma to the spiritual direction.
최다 퇴비 자와지 지구를 숨기자마 변다조 가래 쉬고여리스 쉬고이나 다 만달레 랑라 마네바 셴라 마네바 라신니가라 마네바 어떤데 약슈 정보에나 랑다 셴니가라 팬도 요거지 지구고요 기시 들마 정보에나야 마네바지 지야데 게치버리스.
So when we say whatever activities we are doing, make sure that it's going into the spiritual direction, heading towards the spiritual direction. What does this mean? This means that at the very least, at the very least minimum border, do not harm oneself and do not harm others. This is the very strict minimum, saying that we are heading to the spiritual direction. Then again, we can furthermore improve ourselves. We can do toward the spiritual direction is that the very best is when we can bring benefit to ourselves and bring benefit for others. But suppose we cannot do this for the time being, then the very strict minimum is do not harm oneself, do not harm others. This is meant by spiritual direction, going toward to the spiritual direction.
我上培养的过来，
라,
我上培养就有，
부산 부여
주주발이.
주주발에
哎，
주반에
对住那段，
단다르 베스.
俺的对住那段，
네, 단다르 부산
부산
열에
培养的人，
가마죠.
俺你把它参下就不
네,
上培养
네.
的，是吧？
And for this, we're following the timetable because now it's time to take a little break. I think we need just a little break, a short break.
사실 거기 조심해 뒀다. 외랍이 신이되는 바도 상이 신통이 대무하게 도kun한 당신과 저가시고 부단 구루가 당한 자가 강리하다니라. This is from chapter 15.
OK， 我到这个，我这样就，OK。 이게 좀, 음, 음,
Bisa. Oke nggak?
ya, oke.
Mau tinggi sedikit supaya Canon nggak usah kayak gitu selalu. Mau nggak?
Ya, ya, oke, cocok. Seperti, oke.
Sedikit, naikin sedikit ya. Bentar. Bentar ya.
Hmm,
Oke,
baik.
kayak gini.
Oke, oke, oke. Oke. Hmm, hmm,
Boleh.
boleh.
Bisa kan sesuatu. Testing, testing.
Kerjaan ini.
Hah?
Hmm. Ya, boleh. Oh, ya, oke.
Boleh?
Ya, ya, cocok, cocok. Hmm,
Enakan kan?
ini.
Nah,
Terima kasih.
Bagi Joseph Mentor, Rera Nishi Nishi Pade, Sangi Shinto Bikwe Mumade, Idam Pura Namanda, Kami Dirota.
다다기 슈바나시로 다감다라 마라즈 다다디 대조지 대민류를 무치시야디다 마무슈로다 다대조지 대민류를 무치시야디 간리지 레시디다 바단다 단다 마라즈 취지야게 튼진 창이 류디데려야 아니 대조지 대민류를 무치시라고 다다다 마르즈 취지야게 고가비요 취지나 지투바 안에 쳐라 대바여봐 고가비여봐 등력이 안에 배지 류디지 랑바이바 송사 대라웨 안에 류디데리아 대주지 밀류를 무치에서 디리 우리
So we have been saying there is this condition which is called a precious human rebirth. So it's a human rebirth which is precious. And then how are we going to use or utilize this precious human rebirth? And why is it called a precious human rebirth? The fact that it is called a precious human rebirth because within this human rebirth now, we have all the condition to be able to do a Dharma practice. So a precious human rebirth basically means that for us now to be able to engage in spiritual or Dharma practice, everything is within our capability. For example, there is an opportunity to practice the Dharma. If we are to engage ourselves, to put ourselves into the practice of the Dharma, we can do it. And then we have what is called the qualities called faith. So these are called the condition along with all the conditions, these are called the complete condition for us now to be able to practice the Dharma. So why this is exactly the reason why it is called precious human rebirth.
세상 마란즈에다 밀리질레 미나야 대조지 밀루시야 딜레메 미바요 마르와 다 자블링 디나라야다 미퉁주 튠줄하지 요르세 딜루 숨으로 다 디나로레야다 마라즈 대조지 밀루토 취지야가 고가비요바 취지나 지토바 하고 쇼라 대바요바 다 딜레기 아니 미가제조지 요르스 요 아니 디나로네 다지 넘버스 산제바스는 민다간다레 디나로네다 간다 태바침비 취라야 안에 되지 대바다 되리 안에 지역 고가비요다 간레지요다 가장 인용요로 도스제나 말한다지 상지 땅모이나 나 말한서 다디 대주기 밀류를 못치디 사체보이바다 게체보이바다 디다가세 뒤주 털라 땅모이나 하장을 판보이바 어디 라트바다 문지투보이나 델라테는 말하죠 배신지야 최남리지야 땡땡 저거리요레스 디숭우요로
So the fact that a precious human rebirth, we must remember that this is not a regular human rebirth. There is a regular human rebirth, but then there is a precious human rebirth. In this world, we know the statistics says that how many human exist in the world now. They say based on the counting, around 7 billion. So there are 7 billion human beings in this world. And among those 7 billion human beings, how many of them who have what is called a precious human rebirth with freedom and fortune? And a precious human rebirth, freedom and fortune, this is exactly what we stated before. The ability, the opportunity to practice the Dharma, not only the opportunity, but the ability to do so. If one put his mind and his heart into the practice of the Dharma, he is able to do so. And then the understanding, the person knows how to engage in the spiritual practice. And then, of course, the qualities which is called faith in the spiritual practice under the Dharma. So among 7 billion people in this world, how many of them with the freedom and fortune and all the condition to practice the Dharma? And furthermore, not only regular Dharma practice, not under the regular Buddha Dharma, now here we are in the context of the Mahayana or the great vehicle. So to be a Mahayana or great vehicle, of course, there is an aspect and qualities to be fulfilled. So we are talking about, is there any opportunity to learn about the Mahayana Dharma? And then after that, is there a capability, the strength and capability to be able to practice the Mahayana Dharma? So among the 7 billion people, how many of them? So if we try to count based on the common sense and logical reasoning and the way we try to assess this question, it will come down to only a very little, just a few numbers. So by thinking like this, by assessing ourselves, what is our position, where is our among the 7 billion people, etc., and then the capability, the strength, and the opportunity, it comes down that we have to realize our own myself, our own preciousness, the precious of my human life now, my human body now, the freedom and fortune that I have now. And be thinking like this, what comes up from this kind of analysis, that we feel that indeed, yes, my life is very precious. Indeed, yes, my life is very important. The fact that I have a precious human body now, a precious one, is very important. And by realizing this, the next logical reasoning is that we are not to waste time. We are not to waste opportunity whatsoever. So if we are able to identify precisely our current condition now, this is the moment when we are said we are able to draw the maximum benefit, to utilize it now. So now that we understand the condition, that not so many, what is called a precious human rebirth in terms of numbers, and from that, not so many numbers in terms of the great vehicle, the Mahayana practitioners, and from that comes that not so many have the opportunity to practice the stages of the path to enlightenment, meaning the Lamrim. What is not so many? Not so many people have the opportunity to study it. And then furthermore, after studying, not so many people with the opportunity to practice it. This is the reality. Please try to think about it, try to assess it. It comes down to just only a few numbers. Among those few numbers, you should relate to yourself. Are you those numbers?
최고로 될래야 다지 퇴섬 고좀 나야게 고갑된 중바데 쌓아침버리스 금지가르스 디자마 지다 하나 산제 좀 내되기 답에 뒤져 코알래야 돼야게 체도 휴공제디 시동 손여레스로 화정의 자신부지 손여레디 예나야디 수지 뒤부예나 안에베지 기부숨지 람지리미나라 수 뒤니 하나 잔주 람림시야디나라다 수 뒤레스로 다 된데게 지금 카세부 고대부 냠내제나 지대부 모든 류지 안에베 임바 송자디 자치보다 계시부임이 금지 어디리스.
So now that we have mentioned what is called the stages of the path to enlightenment, this is part of the Dharma, which is taught by the Buddha himself. And we are here to study about it, to reflect about it, and to meditate about it. This very session, this very opportunity is very precious and is very important. Why? Among the Buddha Dharma, taught by the Buddha himself, we know the Buddha taught 84,000 heaps of Dharma, which is a lot, because the Buddha Dharma teaching is very large in numbers and also very deep in terms of the essence. So it's very broad and very deep. So the total number is what is called 84, traditionally called 84,000 heaps, meaning very large and very deep. And all those large teaching, unlimited teaching, if we combine into one, to condense into one, this is precisely what is called the stages of the path for the 3 types of practitioners. In short, we call this Lam Rim. And the fact that we are now here to study about the Lamrim. What are the qualities of the Lamrim? This is the teaching or instruction which is very clear, it's very practical, and if someone try to practice it, he will do it successfully. So this is making the Lamrim session such as this is precious and important.
Dende lam rim siya de tanda kari situ sama lam siya de ngaranzo nam nyungi lamwa siya ge lam diro rimba siya de ta pang rim de re ta ngaranzo lam sanje ta lam de kawala do ya ge lam re situ sama ana tharba ta thamje chebe goban dongjel dela do ya ge lamwa jire dende ge lamwa de la ane gyurim kandis dogo gre tambo kandis jigre niba kandis de rimba de
And now that we mention a phrase or a term which is called lam and rim, so there is lam rim. What is the meaning of lam rim? Lam rim is consists of two words, lam and rim. And lam, first of all, lam is the path, the way. The usual meaning of the path or street or way that we understand is a path, is a way. So it's a path, is a way. And then rim is stages. So in order to achieve Buddhahood, where are we going to? The destination of the Lamrim? The destination of the Lamrim is none other than the city of liberation or the city of perfect enlightenment, the city of Buddhahood itself. So with Lamrim, if we go to the city of Buddhahood, we have to know which is the path, the route to go there, and also the stages to go there, meaning what is to do first, what is to do second, what is to be practiced thirdly, and so forth. So this is Lamrim.
Tagi Gondo Shuba Nashin. Sanje Jumne de Jitabe, Chubun Jiti, Shidon La Soba, Dubina, Ibusunge Lamji Rimbanando Dubari. Ibusunge Lamji Rimbasia, the Su Duyun Ditamba, Janju Lamji Rimba to Dubari. Janju Lamji Rimba de Su Dubayana, Lamjeto Namsun Siadina to Dubari, or Dusri.
So as we mentioned before, the Buddha taught widely. The Buddha Dharma is broadly and also deeply in what is traditionally called 84,000 hips of the Dharma, meaning unlimited, limitless hips of Dharma. And all of these limitless Dharma, if we condense it, is called, this is what is called instruction called the stages of the path for the three types of practitioners. And the stages of the path for the three types of practitioners, if we condense it again, then this is basically what is called the Lamrim path. And this Lamrim path, what is this? This is precisely the topic of this session, which is called the three principal qualities of the path. This is the Lamrim path.
Dita Veda Lamjuzo Namsun Siatita, Tomar Minjun Siatira. Lo Chutun Roalaya, Tambung Minjun Siati Kugres, Tisumber. Manzo de Lotte Chula Pachoyaki, Samloto, Tambudi Kargosan, Minjun Siati Guliki Gugres, what did I?
So for the three principal qualities of the path itself, the number 3 is mentioned. So there are 3. And the 3 principal qualities, the first one is what is called renunciation. So what is renunciation? If a practitioner, firstly, if the mind is to be directed towards the Dharma, the mind is to be directed towards the spiritual practice, the first qualities to be cultivated is called renunciation. For the mind to be directed towards the Dharma, we need to cultivate renunciation.
Jazanda Marazo Lodi Chula Chogo Gure Lodi Chula Chola Nijugor Disura. Lodi Chula Pachi Chutia Deba Yoba Tamji Digresan and Digumari. Chudian and Tebachi Chus Duaji Jigugura. Chudi Tebachi Lamdo Dua Jebalaya and a Janjuji Sim the Yinjimi Jiguguri, Jaza, Niba de Janjuji Sim Siadi.
So for the renunciation, the first quality, this is the mind, the qualities that directed the mind towards the Dharma, towards spiritual, towards the direction of the spiritual. And then if we ask, if someone who has the wish to practice the Dharma, is it sufficient for just to having the wish? Oh, I wish to practice the Dharma, is it enough? The answer is no, because this person has to practice what is called the great vehicle, the Dharma of the great vehicle, or the Mahayana Dharma. And in order to be able to practice the Mahayana Dharma, the person or the practitioner has to cultivate what is called the spirit of enlightenment, the bodhicitta. So the three principal qualities, number 2 is the quality which is called spirit of enlightenment, the bodhicitta itself.
다만 란주에다 취디다 당물로디 취초 디네 안에 취대야 태과침비 취디 지에 안에 취디 태과침비 취 제바담지 디거를 해서는 대야 대담지 디기 말해서로 가르에스디자 뭐 둥에다가라 용구요래 강에다가라 용구요래 다 둥에 용야다 강에 용야가 규지도 가르 지고요래 세디도 세디자 뭐 안에 뉴립스야 되다 시립스야 지니 여러 다간다 유모도스 지고거래 트리버도스 지고거래 제가 디파 뽕야다 디파 맵스야게 소디게 가리지고요래서나 안에 동이도게 셔랍스야 되게 지고요래 이네 마송자 동이도게 셔랍스야 돼 안에 매도미로아지리 디고 그래서 수바디 되네로.
Yes. So when we break it down, the first one is to direct the mind towards the direction of the Dharma. So this is what we need, renunciation. After that, we need to practice the Mahayana Dharma. So when we need to practice the Mahayana Dharma. Is it sufficient? Is it enough saying that we want to practice the Mahayana Dharma and practicing Mahayana Dharma? The answer is no, it is not enough, it's not sufficient. Why? Because the suffering is still there, the difficulty is still there. Because the causes of the suffering basically comes to the root. There are two main causes, being the obscuration, the klesa obscuration, the affliction obscuration, and the omniscient obscuration. So these are two major obscuration that we have. And in order to discard all the suffering, we need to discard these two types of obscuration. And in order to discard these two types of main obscuration, we need what is called the wisdom understanding directly on emptiness. So here comes the third qualities among the three principal qualities, which is called wisdom directly realizing emptiness.
That in the Basonza Marazo Kapsupabi Chichuodi and Lamzo Namsura. Cesar Lamjo Namsumsia Watiri.
So this is basically covering shortly what is meant by the title itself. The title or the topic that we are studying or discussing is called the three principal qualities of the path. And this is the three qualities that have been just mentioned.
Jida Lamzo Namsum de Layada and Deva Mawiyori, etc. Deva Mawiyori, the Inayatanda Kapsupapa, Medi, Dinema, Shuyadi, Dajida, Subjedi. Lamzo Namsungi, Deva Ma Jabduzamba, Subjero, Subjedi and Jabji Dijinibi, and Lamzo Namsungi, Deva Giori, or Digi, and a subject Shishachin. Then Jebada, Miabayomare. Inaya subject Dishichan Mashu.
No, so. Subject doesn't import Takarang Lamzo Namsum Re.
Lamzo Namsum Devaji
To A.
Yori, you have the teaching. And the G di Gari.
The subject di Marwa, di Casa.
Suzulaman Dimari.
Dimare.
Dimari. Maritanda de Lamzo Namsum Korama, that's 6 Yoro.
Yes.
That's subject, Penadi, Niju Dembe, Diri, Nibadi, Janju Sim Dembe Saware. Sumba de Tonido with our Tengeri Seko Tabu, Niba Duzio, what is
the pecha mixer di pecha di Yorebe, captating
really?
Yori.
I do it. Eran din Rebadi Yoro.
Yore, but you.
One Rebadi Yonu.
So, for the three principal qualities of the path by J. Rinpoche or J. Tsongkhapa, there are a lot of commentaries and explanation, and also there is the subject or the overview points, the overview of the three principal qualities of the part. And the one that we are using as the basis of the explanation for this session is the one being authored by Gyabje Dejeng Nyingpo Pabongka Rinpoche. So this is the text that we are referring in explaining the three principal qualities of the part.
지ran the subject in an individual.
Yes.
Near the number do digit dinama capital shishangiro. Chidan the knowledge Jebina, subject you want to Jebina, subject of Sumiori, then you talk about Jubiala, then you G. Lee went and a Shabbat Harchi Jawaja. That Ambola, Choba Jobata, Somba Tamjawada, Yamarkua say a theory, the Chidan Jiran. Debetusinal year in Debasaman. That in Alone, Dambo Choba Jebasiadi, Chizulamanala Chaselo said that in one go to the what did Chujuki Shumri said that Tambo dire, Lamzunam Sungi, Tambodi, Chizulamanamla Chaselo said. What did you soon?
Yes. So we are about to start. Now we are starting to see the text itself, the three principal qualities of the part based on the overview by Gyabje Dejeng Nyingpo. And the first one is explaining the reason for composing the text. And the very first, which is common to the Dharma text, is expressing homage. And for this very verse part, this is correspond to the text itself. The first line when it said, homage to the venerable spiritual masters.
That Lama Namla Chase Lucia did that Chujuki Shumri Yesera. That Chujusia the Anichita turned out of the Karisi Dizamba. And Lama Kibutamba Kanda Kayanga, Susu Tenju Sangura. That some Dizamba and a Tambo Susu Lama de la Chubachigur. Chubachi Jumzi de Karisi Dizamba. Susu Tenju Dizambalaya, Negabki Parcheta, and Nega Parche Pashia, Tenju Dizambalaya, and Gigim Mamboyarova. Dipashia, Tartu Garesi Dizamba, Tenju Dizambala, Tene, Tenju de la Tesam Gosum Jebala, Tene, Tare Sanji Govan Tuya di, and a Tartu Gobari Yesiva.
So this is the stages that common to all Dharma texts. The first one being paying homage. So paying homage, basically when then an author about to compose a text, the person, the author, pay a respect or homage to the spirit master first. So what is the purpose of paying homage to the spiritual masters? The first reason is because in order to be able to compose the text successfully, the author has to overcome temporary obstructions. So for the temporary obstructions can be overcome by first paying homage to the spiritual masters. And this is exactly what is being practiced by the author of the text, homage to the spiritual masters, the first one, in the temporary meaning or purpose. And then for the ultimate purpose of paying homage to the spiritual masters, by studying, reflecting, and meditating on this text, it will bring the ultimate benefit in the form of the Buddhahood itself, the Buddhahood itself. So there are two, for the temporary reason and the ultimate reason. For the first part, for the very first stage, paying homage to the spiritual masters.
Jidan Lama Susu, Tenju de Zamde, Chobar Jidu Zamba, Chusu Mindawa Yores, Jiyudi. Kashigi Ningji Chambola Chobar Chigurida.
Yes.
Kashigi Anebeji. Chambasum la choba chigores. Chambasum sia diore, and the Candela Bueno. Genanata Makaya sia dire. And Lamshi sia che. And Shishi sia chigure takanda. Then I Chidin Jamgungiro. Chidin Jamgungi, Tinjumondo, Samdi Zamba, Chambasum la choba chigores.
Chambasum.
Chambasum sia.
Loso.
Chigtanda, Doctor Shishan Duty, Tatamali. And Chidin Jamungi, Tinjumondo, Samdi Zamba, Chambasum la choba chigores. Lama la choba chiamari, Chambasum la choba. Robin the water with Uman Juba Samdi Zamba, Robin the water wire. 안에 오만 주고 잠디 잠바 닝지 첨볼라 쳐버쳐버.
That's so.
음.
That's
얘나야 단다 제리 뭐 저기 안에 남소 디 잠디 잠바 닝지 첨볼라 쳐버쳐요 말에 안에 겸바숨라 쳐버쳐요 말 가바 쳐버쳐버선 라마라 쳐버쳐버. 예스디.
yes. So for the very first part, by paying homage at the very beginning of a text, there are different ways to do about it. So different authors will do different ways. For example, there are texts that start with the paying homage to the great compassion. And then there are also texts which start with paying homage at the very beginning by paying homage to the three omniscience. So for example, in the Arya Maitreya, in composing Abhisamayalankara, the author stated at the very the beginning part, paying homage to the three omniscience, including the three bodies of the Buddha. This is what being used. And then, for example, for Arya Chandrakirti, when composing the middle way text, the great middle way text, is paying homage to the great compassion. But here, for Je Rinpoche, at the very beginning part, when paying homage, we can see he's not referring to the great compassion. He also not referring to the three omniscient. He's referring to the masters, spiritual masters. So we can see homage to the venerable spiritual masters.
나 딘데임바 순자다 제르무지기 안에 라마라 쳐버지 그러와. 다 라마라 쳐버지야 돼 고랑게 라마디 안에 뭐지 라마디 다 지다 안에 지주인 장배양다로 라마 우마바다스 안에 지주인다 와라 소바다 망보여래서 고랑 뭐지 라마디라 안에 주비 라마디 텔레마와르와다 안에 자지지지 라마여레 사무타 주지 라마야 요레다 라마 망보여레스
No gilama tonda karire.
뭐지 라마스는 이 구루 랑송 단에 띠다 구루 띠다 랑송을
And by this we can see for clearly now, Je Rinpoche referring homage to the venerable spiritual masters. And now can take a look at the author himself, which is Je Rinpoche, Lama Tsongkhapa. When Je Rinpoche being the author of this text and referring homage to the venerable spiritual masters, who are the spiritual masters of Je Rinpoche when he is authoring this text. So for the spiritual master of Je Rinpoche, first of all, we can see who are the direct spiritual masters. And the direct spiritual master of Je Rinpoche, as we know, based on the biography, the direct one being mentioned is Manjusri himself, and then there is Lama Umapa, and then there is Lama Rendawa. These mentioned to be the direct spiritual masters by Je Rinpoche. And then there are other spiritual masters, which is called the lineage masters. And for the lineage masters, of course, there are a lot in numbers because the lineage masters, for the widespread activities, there are a lot of the lineage masters. And then for the profound part, there are a lot of spiritual lineage masters. So this is, we try to see who are the venerable spiritual masters referred by the author, which is Je Rinpoche.
지당아라주 뭐지 라마다 규비 라마스에디 케바르 가르스디 잠바 배낭아라주 림부치다고이나 뭐지 라마다 송주 뭐수 쉬르와 맞아 림부치기 뒤는 왕 뭐수 쉬르 송주 뭐수 쉬르 와디 림부치다보데 마라주 뭐지 라마 차고레 다 규비 라마스에디 페리 차샤비나 겹주 파본가 림부치기 라마라 림부치 과랑게 뭐지 라마래 마라주 규비 라마 차데요리다 송주 뭐수 쉬요 말라 이나야 림부치 규닝아도 라마 차르와 규비 라마다 뭐지 라메 케바르 와디 게지레
So the term the direct spiritual master and the lineage master being mentioned. So what is the difference between the two? First of all, we see what is called the direct spiritual master. Direct spiritual masters, for example, here we can take the context and give example. Direct spiritual master, we can give the example directly, Kyabje Tapo Rinpoche. Why we mentioned here as a direct spiritual master? Because we receive teaching, the Dharma teaching from Kyabje Tapo Rinpoche directly. We sit in front of the master and we receive the teaching directly. So this can be stated as direct spiritual masters. On the other hand, there is all lineage masters. The lineage masters in this context, based on the example that we have used, the lineage masters can refer to Kyabje Pabongka Rinpoche. Kyabje Pabongka Rinpoche is the direct spiritual master of Kyabje Dakpo Rinpoche, but not for us, because we don't directly, but it is Kyabje Pabongka Rinpoche being the direct spiritual master for Kyabje Dakpo Rinpoche. So for us, Kyabje Pabongka Rinpoche is the lineage masters. So by this, we can differentiate between the two terms.
제자다 말아도 다시 빼나 양무림지 제만용바 야나 마용바 제만용바 정도 맛에 양무림지 숭주 슈만용와들의 여버제로 안에 림보치 라마 차차바들의 여버이나 림보치 되는 숭주 슈 림보치 라마 차차바들의 여버이나 양무림지 제뉴여마를 숭주 슈뉴여마데 이나야 양무림지 다라 라마 차차리 그래서 뒤비 라마 차리겠습니다.
Yes. So taking another context, for example, sometimes people say that this I haven't met directly His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I have not directly received a teaching from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. By saying this, however, if the same person has the direct spiritual master of Kyabje Dakpo Rinpoche, meaning receiving the teaching directly, then for this person, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the lineage master for him. This person. Why? Because His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the direct spiritual master of Kyabje Dakpo Rinpoche. So if he says that Kyabje Dakpo Rinpoche is his master, then making His Holiness the Dalai Lama automatically the lineage master for him. So it's not necessary to say, yes, the condition correct. I haven't met directly. I haven't received the teaching directly, but you have being the disciple of Kyabje Dakpo Rinpoche, that's making His Holiness the Dalai Lama is lineage masters, even though not receiving the teaching and not meeting directly.
지단들로 숭주圈만나무이네 수수 라마 차야 요리 숭주 남부이네냐 수수 라마 차야 내봐요 말이 지단들로.
Yes. And by this, we can take another context and try to assess a situation. There could be a situation when we haven't received any teachings, but we consider the person as master. On the other hand, we could be already received teachings, join a teaching, receive a teaching, but not necessarily taking as the master. So I repeat, there could be a situation we receive teaching, we're not receiving any types of teaching, but already considered as a master. On the other hand, we could be receiving teaching, but not considering the one experiencing as a master.
제자다 말아도 다다 디나라 충분하시 지준 라마남라 차세로시 어디 라마라야 최바지야디 금지가리스디 잡아서 신이 든지디 예침부인바디 다 되기 때문에 숨어리.
Yes. So this is related to the part of the text that we are seeing now when it says homage to the venerable spiritual masters at the very first line. Why it is stated first at the very top, at the very beginning. This is related directly to the topic to the practice of relying upon our spiritual masters. So the relying upon spiritual master being utmost importance, being the one that we need to rely upon. This is placed firstly on the first top, the very first line.
제자 지준 라마남라 차서 지준 라마세로 지준 라마세야디 안에 기부숨 때문에 레스모리가 제세야디 기부 충무 때문에 준세야디 기분 링 때문에 라마세야디게 안에 기부 첨부 때문에 제자 지준 라마세야디 기부숨 주들다 람지리마 너 안디 준두잉디 안에
Yes. So for this first line, homage to the venerable spiritual masters, we can break it furthermore to be in more detail, but these have to be correspond directly to the original Tibetan terms. When I stated here homage to the venerable spiritual masters, the venerable spiritual masters in the original Tibetan term is what is called Jejun Lama. So homage to the Jejun Lama. And Jejun Lama, you can see, Je and Chun, and also Lama. Jejun Lama, the term itself, contain within this term the three stages of the part. So for J, the first one is correspond to the part of the lesser motivation. For the Chun is correspond directly to the part of the middle motivation practitioners, and the Lama correspond to the great beings, the great motivation. So Jejun Lama or Venerable Spiritual Masters in the English term comprise what is called the lesser motivation, the middle motivation, and the great motivation. These three combined together, this is exactly what is called Lamrim. And as Lamrim, as you mentioned before, Lamrim is condensed into this very topic, which is called the three principal qualities of the part.
Jizun Lama Namla Chaselosi, Jizun Lama said, Jesse de la Anacarisi Samba, Ane Sunguyan de Tengres Warta, Jesse at the Sunguyan de Tenrava, Ane Junisia de Ane Guyan de Tengres, Lama Sea de Tugian de Tengres, Dortuna Jizun Lama Sea de Usu Tugian de Tengres.
And furthermore, when we use the term Jejun Lama, referring to the term Jejun Lama, Venerable Spiritual Masters, for the Jejun Lama can further break down into the meaning. For the J itself, it carries the meaning of the qualities of the speech. And Chun, the second syllable, is referring to the qualities of the body. And Lama is referring to the qualities of the mind. So the phrase Jejun Lama is referring to the qualities of the body, speech, and mind.
다 데네마 손자다 지준 라마 남라 차세로서 다 제르버치기 지준 라마 남라 차세로 거라니 당외지 라마다 규비 라마 남라야다 안에 구수 투지 연된 전배권에 안에 고숨 구비권에 차세기 인시 디숨으로
Plus. And then we see when Je Rinpoche is stating in the line, homage to the Jejun Lama Namla, homage to the Venerable Spiritual Masters. What is meant by here, first of all, Je Rinpoche is referring to the spiritual master, both direct spiritual master and lineage spiritual masters. And then Je Rinpoche is referring to the qualities of the body, speech, and mind. So by recalling the direct and the lineage masters, and by recalling their qualities of the body, speech, and mind, then the Je Rinpoche is offering homage. So this is the meaning when it's stated here by Je Rinpoche.
다 데네마 손자 지준 라마 남라 차세로 시야디 갑도들라야 다 신이 든지 거 요리시 디숨으로 다 디인지 잠바다 이거를 대신 도티지 슈비나로 신이 든지 시야디
Plus.
지당 알아서 람제 자와 신이 든지 세다 베지 안에 람림 체면나라 안에 요도선여로
Plus.
이 인지 잠바다 람제 자와 신이 든지 숨고야 금지디 가르시디 잠바 나라주의 규례야 또베 연된 치중 간리지 규례 기고고 유비나야 라마라마 템바 싸와니니 게요 말이에스 제가 라마라 때네 기고바 임바 순자 신이 든지시야디 랑귤라 연내 탐제 계약에 싸워다 버리에스 제가 람제 자와 신이 든지시야디로
Yes. So when we said here, homage to the spiritual masters is directly connected to the practice of relying upon a spiritual masters. For this, there is a phrase what we understand in the Lamrim, saying that relying upon a spiritual master being the root of the part. This is mentioned or stated in the Lamrim Chemo, the Great Lamrim. So what is meant by here, we can discuss a little bit here at the very beginning, the practice of relying upon a spiritual masters. So being the root of the part, meaning that basically whatever qualities that we would like to achieve, however small or great qualities that we would like to cultivate or achieve within our mind streams, this all being however small or however big, it depends solely only for the practice of relying upon a spiritual masters. If we are not relying upon a spiritual masters, there is no whatsoever qualities can be achieved. It is only by relying solely and mainly upon a spiritual master can we achieve whatever qualities that we would like to achieve or cultivate it. So this is the very reason is stated here, homage to the spiritual master related to the practice of relying upon the spiritual masters.
지당 알아서 신이 된지 거기다 림보시기다 유다 나바 군도다 베 남릉기 숨주 매나마다 유나 베절 신이 된지 거를 유eben 매버 소리지래도 망쳐가 되려와 다 상미 캔거 요리스 연아야 단다 값수 봐봐 주절라만 남라 차셀로스야 돼 갑두대야 신이 된지 거지 레로와 다 대단 저유베 안에 베지 신이 된지 거를 돌뒤지 쉬고 있으러
So in general, if we hear the topic of relying upon the spiritual masters, this remind us directly and spontaneously to a figure which is Dapo Rinpoche. If you know, I'm sure that you all know this, understand this. Dapo Lama Rinpoche, Kyabje Dapo Rinpoche, whenever he give a Lamrim teaching, he must be explaining about the practice of relying upon the spiritual masters. As if we can say, if Rinpoche teach Lamrim, then he for sure certainly will teach about relying upon the spiritual masters. So if he teach Lamrim, then he must be teaching about relying upon the spiritual masters. And on this context here, when we discussing the three principal qualities of the path, and then when Je Rinpoche is stating homage to the spiritual masters, this is the same, because homage to the spiritual masters related to the topic or the practice of relying upon spiritual masters. So it brings us here the same. When we say Dapo Kyabje Rinpoche, when he takes Lamrim, he must be teaching about relying upon spiritual masters. Je Rinpoche, when he stated the first line, homage to the spiritual master, it's the same. It's replying that we must learn about relying upon spiritual masters. And for this very reason, this practice will be explained briefly at the very beginning.
세상 림보시기다 가두이네 신이 되주고 마모 송고에 금지대 가르레스 만지 세부제 바슈비나 신이 되주셔야 돼 하장게 계셔 보이마 신이 되주셔야 돼 야부지 중부에나 안에베지 람지 림바 차상와 야부지 윤고여비 금지대라 때네 사와디 야부지 중부에나 양알로마 메도 제부 상마 야부 윤고여바 빼와디나 신 안에베지 신이 되주 야부지 중부에나 하나 남지 똑바 간리지 유리 깨고네 야부지 깨야요바 임바 송자 림보시기 다딘 게 첨부지 지지 가두이네 디 소야디 금지되라.
So emulating Rinpoche and modeling Rinpoche, who always stated or emphasis on the importance of relying upon the spiritual masters, then we try to ask or analyze what is the reason. And the reason is very clear, because whenever we say that relying upon a spiritual master is a very important practice, simply because whatever qualities of the path, whatever qualities of the Lamrim that we could cultivate or achieve within oneself, all of these qualities depend solely on the practice of relying upon the spiritual masters, being this practice is like the root. If we have a good root, then the trunks of the tree, the branches, and then the leaves, and then the fruits, with a good root, there is a hope that we can achieve all those good qualities of a tree. So if we have a very good practice relying upon our spiritual masters, whatever realization that we wish to achieve within our mind stream, we can achieve it. This is the reason why relying upon spiritual master is said to be utmost important.
That's right. 세상다 말아줘 신이 된 주셔야지. 지다 말아줘 신이 된 주셔야지. 간데레스 뒤잡아. 배낭 알아줘다 라마다 로멘 저와 차버지 여러와다. 다 라마다 로멘 저와서야 돼. 간데스 차거리에서 쉬고이나. 다 숭주 쉬고 잠지 라마다 로멘 저와 차거리에서나 사와니네 차게 말이에요. 하나 라마다 로멘 저와서야 돼. 간데스 차거리에서 쉬고이나. 다 지금 수수 숭주 쉬디자마 라마디 제네 숭주 쉬 안에 숭주 쉬가라 대다디 안에 네 라마 땡기 사베다 삼로디 예베 땡네 라마데라 차체 숭주 쉬들레 제비나 안에 숭주 베지 치직니지 만도 마시비네 라마다라 차차레스.
So for the practice of relying upon our spiritual masters, when we try to approach this topic or this practice, firstly, there is a point where we have to decide what is the point when the relationship of the disciple and the master being established. So how does one establish that there is already a relation between a disciple and a spiritual masters? So for example, for someone, when although he or she receive a teaching, listen to the teaching, does it necessarily automatically say that already there is a relationship of disciple and master? No, not necessarily. So we come back to the basic question, how to establish a relation between a disciple and the spiritual masters. The way to go about it is that firstly, this person will meet the master first, the upcoming master, the master to be. First, you have to meet the person. After meeting the person, then he has to receive explanation, receive teaching. And then the establishment, how to establish, is a sober, is a knowing, is a mindful decision. There is a decision from the part of the disciple saying that by receiving this teaching, I would like to rely upon these masters. So the point of establishing is a decision, a clear decision, a sober decision, an understanding decision from the part of the disciple saying that I would like to rely upon the spiritual masters. And after this deciding like this, and then he received the teaching, he is praying prostration, etc. And this is the way to establish the relationship between a disciple and the spiritual masters.
hiện tại chỉ là cái rồi là sự thực mà ta suy suy nghĩ mà muốn suy nghĩ này à ta suy gặp lại à ta mà làm mà ta tiếng cái咩事rồi vậy này à lúc trong chỉ cái gì sự chứ lúc trong chỉ cái gì thì à或者những个gì上面无论对这就有个呢suy nghĩ听嘛muốn suy nghĩ này à làm mà的路面的我的差别有嘛的是知道的的
Yes. So once the decision already being taken, at that time the relationship already being established. And during that moment, that period, however much verses of the Dharma being heard, whether being just one or two lines or one or two verses, the relationship already established. So even though just one or two verses, there exists the relationship based on the decision. And then by stating this clearly, on the other hand, there can be a situation when a disciple or a practitioner, even though he listened many sessions and a lot of teaching, but not necessarily relying upon the teacher. Because this person can say that I am in the state of studying, and for the sake of studying, I am in the state of listening a lot to the Dharma teaching. If this person has this type of motivation, even though he listened a lot to a lot of explanation from a stern master, it doesn't necessarily mean that he already rely upon that master.
다 뒤나 로는 개발직 가려서나 당아 단 저요가 뒤제비나 다 왕지 쉬사비나 당에 라마만 있어요 말이 다그나 차서도 그래서 이시디마 제비나 왕톱지요 말이
Yes.
왕이나리 제나이나리 다 뒤쉬사비 제라 다 데라 독도요 말이
Yes.
대마 임바 지당의 순조들이 쉬야라 불능아들이 지제마나 안에 라마다 로면 저와 차바다 마차비 개발 어디래서
Yes. So after we try to break down into details on the relationship based on in general like this, there is one in particular making the difference, which is when it's related to the tantric teachings. So it's related to the tantric teaching and tantric activities, such as receiving an initiation or a permission, Wang and Jenang, being initiation or permission from a master. When receiving that from a master, then automatically it becomes one spiritual masters. So we cannot say that just like when you say we can receive teaching but not necessarily relying upon the master, it doesn't do like that. It doesn't go like that for the tantric teaching. If we have received the tantric initiation or tantric permission, it's the same, the two, then automatically the person become our masters.
다 된대게 라마지 차차베이나 다 수수 라마다 사회 라마니기다 캬바르 가르요리스 디슈비나 지다 라마시야디 다기 슈바나시리로 안에 수수 다베지 라마 땡기 삼베다 베추 가르 망뉴 간디지 세베네 다가라 라마다 로메도 차도구리스 와다디시로 다 사회 라마시야디 캬바르 가르지요리스 디사마 수수 미지나 놀래야다 라마 마모 융초거와 다 라마 디세나 로네 수수 베지 semba de saru doyata semba de lola choya ge shukchishu lama kare kadin do kare kalobla tene susu yungdo o di lama di susu sawe lama re seti sunguro.
Yes. And by this, when we say that we establish the relationship with the spiritual masters, then there is a differentiation between what is called one's lama, my master, and one's or my root master, a root lama. So for one's lama or one's spiritual masters, this is exactly what being mentioned just now. If there is a sober decision, a clear decision, I want to rely myself upon this master, then it becomes one's spiritual masters. And then there is a slight difference with one's root spiritual master or root guru. So what is root guru? Root guru is someone, so for example, within this one life that we have now, we could have a lot of masters in terms of number, many, more than one. So among those many masters, who are the master that for us personally, we become a better, way better person, who among these masters for us, that we have the feeling for the Dharma is the strongest feeling, who makes us way better, who improve better, and who makes us feel a lot more stronger feeling based on his advice or based on his kindness. So from whose masters the kindness to us and the advice to us personally, that we feel that we improve better and we feel for the Dharma the feeling to be stronger. So among the many masters, there could be one in particular that cause us to be like that. And for this particular master, we can address to him as the root master, the root guru.
Detabe lama de susu sawe lama yimbi gyumze kare sidi zama ngarajo samlu de chola choya ge shukchishu sawar de lama digi jebala tene ane dende lama de susu sawe lama chare sidi ro.
Yes. And by this, we can establish the very meaning of addressing or stating that one's root lama or root guru is because the effect of this certain person or guru, the effect of this lama towards us personally, that causes us to engage in the Dharma strongly. This guru causes us to engage in the Dharma practice the strongest. It causes us the strongest feeling to practice the Dharma. He is the root reason I am practicing Dharma. Therefore, he is my root guru. He is my root masters.
다 데이터베 사회 라마데 찌기 캬버르베서나 찌기 네바요 말이 망고 융초거리 예스 디소로.
Yes.
이 경제 가르에서는 다 단데 내가블라야 수수 사회 라마 찌기 여비나. 다 로 찌기지 제래야냐 라마 현다지 제제. 냐 말아도 삼로데 로로 쳐야 로로 삼로데 쳐라 쳐야 될래 숙체와지 치면이나. 야 대야 안에 수제 사회 라마 차도 그래스. 제가 사회 라마 망고 융초거리스. 어디네를 가시 삼제자마 찍만도 매베 소리 삼당고 있어로 인데 말이스.
As for the number of root master or root guru, is it only just one and one only? The answer is not necessarily, because for the number of root masters, it can be more than one, it can be many. Why? Simply because for the time being, if there is a certain practitioner, he said that my root guru is one, this one, that's okay, that's legitimate. But then this person can also, in the future times, say like 1 or 2 years from now, he will meet another masters, and with these masters, he also feel the strong feeling towards the Dharma based on these masters, and that time he can also regard this person as his root masters. So it's not to state a root master, it is not limited to only one in terms of the amount of person. Just one is not limited. It can be many.
다 대답이 라마디 땐다 마텐 시야디 당부 상마 수술라 라마 상마 수술 요리에서 라마 땐다 마텐 시야리 이 수술라 라마 요리에서 당부 딱제지야디 게시머리 수로 안에 라마 디다디 안에 때바이나 마세 디다 치마니가라야 안에 베지 야고지 용사리 용사 마레스 라마 디 때바이나 당아 낭담니 다 뒤다니 수나 라마 디 땡기 사베다 윤르게 딱제디 제 사베 제라 라마 때바이나 다 뒤디니 수다 라마 차로 어두스리
As for the relying upon spiritual masters, whether or not we are about to rely or not to rely, before the relationship being established, the freedom to choose is 100% on the side of the upcoming to be disciple to be. So before establishing anything, before deciding on anything, the decision is on your side 100%. The freedom to decide is 100%. Therefore, that's why the reason when within this practice, it is mentioned, emphasized mostly on the part when you are about to decide, because this is the phase when you have to analyze or observe the master. So in the context of relying upon a spiritual master, you are allowed to check on the masters. Even you are encouraged to check on the masters, to take the time to check about him, to ask around about him, etc. And then when you are checking, what are you checking about? Then you are checking whether or not when you rely upon this master, it can bring benefit for you for this life and the next life. You asking if I about to rely myself upon the master, will it bring benefit for myself this life and the next life to come? If you can decide that is indeed this master can guide me this life and next life, then you decide you want to rely. Then since the decision being made, that moment on, you have taken that person as your spiritual masters. Since the moment you decide forward, then you have become the disciple. But before that, the one being emphasized is the period before that. Before the decision taken 100% decision on your hand, freedom on your hand.
라마 메바디 가두차레 시디자마 라마 땐 사비 제라 라마요 마르다 가레 시디자마다 마 라마 콩에 라마 마이스라 마 라마 모고신 유서르 드네요 말 가레 시디자마 라마 땐 사르와 라마 땐 사디자마 마라조 미지치기 파마디 수시 파마 마이세 랍투고 마라 수수 파마디 저와 야부 중보이나리 저와 야부 마 중보이나리 수수 파마 이바디 독도요 말 파마 따가라리 배워디나 신 라마 땐 사비 제라야 니주 야바다 두고 가리 중보이나 수수 라마 따가라리스
Yes.
어디리 디라마요 말 따가라리
Yes. So we mentioned the period when you are having the freedom or when you are not having the freedom. So if this is very clear, before any decision or establishing the relationship happen, then 100% you have the freedom. But after you decide so, since that moment, there is so-called there is no freedom. You are not free. What is the meaning? Meaning here is that once we have decided that we would like to rely upon a spiritual master, meaning the relationship already being established, then since then, we cannot say that when something happened, we cannot say, oh, I don't want to rely to him anymore. We cannot say that, oh, I don't want to follow him anymore. I cannot regard him as master anymore. This cannot happen once you decide. Because once you decide, the same things situation apply when we have the parents of this life. So we come to this life from our parents, our father and mother. Within this life, there is no way for us to say that I don't want this father or I don't want this mother. I don't want you to be my father. We cannot say that. So this is an unreversed situation. Once they have become our parents, then we cannot reverse the situation. The same with the spiritual masters. When we decided and the relationship already been established, we cannot reverse the situation by saying, oh, sorry, or I cannot rely upon you. So in the practice of spiritual masters, be a good condition or is a bad condition, be it ups and down, still the relationship is there. We cannot undo the relationship.
주주 중립 받으러.
We are until what time? Yeah, Sunibado.
나도 있어.
음.
다 된대게 라마데 된 사비 제래야 다 가르지 삼는 당고 그래 시디 잠바로. 다 라마 산제스 통에 대버서야 되다 가고 싶으러 말한 정도네. 레디 이나 말한저 다베 라마데라야 안에 님에다 라마야 다 가르치고 그래다. 교회마 통해야 다베지 합시 지구요래 해서 다 간다 된대래.
After we have established the relationship with spiritual masters, what is the state of mind to be generated? So the state of mind relying upon the spiritual masters, based on the teaching, you know for sure, we have to regard the master as the Buddha himself. So generating the faith, seeing the master as the Buddha himself, this all you know for sure. But then the question on the context is that, are we able to do so? So based on our present situation and present condition, it's safe to say that it is relatively difficult, even it's very difficult. However, for this context, to not see the faults of the masters, to avoid focusing on the faults of the masters, there is one particular method that we can utilize.
인레인 바송자다 간데스 따고 그래 시주자마 당아라즈다 라마지 여러와 다 라마디 다 지다 안에 소소기오 타메베 남바든지 전대로 다 지다 다디 인도자마 다 기시 원나 마랑게 라마디 원에 다 구숨 슈누 주숨시여라 슈누 주숨시야디다 추기 남바 템바 이나네 안에 산제 남편주마다 제투 말했어. 맞아 제투야 말. 베나 추구 시야디 이슈 추구 시야지로. 제나나 담마가야. 다 제나나 담마가야 시야디게 남바테 뭐야나 맞아 제투고 말아. 맞아 소남디요 말이 디제야. 디 맞아 파자 사도베 자주 심바도세 제투고요 말이다. 디 산제 낭로라 산제만도 제투고요 말. 이지 말아줘 기위신이디 되지게 남바테 뭐야나 제투고 말했어. Dene de mayimba dile te chig sewa lungwe namba samboga kaya se ro samboga kaya se ya dige namba temba yena samboga kaya se ya dige namba pena ane jizu jambe yang sora bo jizu drama sora bo ta be ji gen yu ro pirha dia ne ro mangwe yu wa dinde namba de e jaju semba satobe jaju semba to semba da jetugo yo mari 사토베 자주 sem바도스다 와든 여기 나바든저도 lungu 나바도스 제투거 나도 디 제투고 말이서 남 민도와 수마디 가르세는 기시 말아서 기위신이 디 쇼그 주기 나바데마이나 निर्माण धर्म काया से जरो वो दिगी नाबाते बयना पेना सांजे शाजा थुबा सोरा बता ये यो ला वे दिनो यरो चाहाया वो दिनो की नाबाते बयना याय मारा तो सोना में जेथुगु मारे दी 소소 제오 레다 쓰기도 소소 제오 선ам 첨부 도 쓰면다 제투고요 말아 맞아 제투고요 말아 이 남바트는로 내가 어디 주는 거야
So when we say that there is a method of not seeing the faults of the spiritual masters, then it comes down to the method what is called relating to the way of seeing, how we perceive, how we are seeing, how we think. And then for this, we can see the condition by seeing that what is the form of the spiritual masters. Because spiritual masters being the Buddha, for the Buddha, it is a very high state of being, which is called the Buddha or Buddhahood. So for example, if a practitioner is about to see the spiritual master in the form of the Buddha, in the form of the Buddha himself in the Jnana Dharmakaya, is a Dharmakaya, the Dharma body of the Buddhas. This is not possible. Why is that? Because only a Buddha can see among the Buddhas. Because Jnana Dharmakaya is the Dharma body of the Buddha, is among the Buddhas himself who can see each other, who can perceive each other. Even the practitioners who has achieved paths and grounds doesn't have the ability to see the Buddha in the form of the Dharma body, Jnana Dharmakaya, only the Buddhas among themselves. And then another option is that if a practitioner is to meet the spiritual master in the form of the Sambhogakaya, then the Sambhogakaya, for example, being the Arya Manjusri, and then the Tara, Arya Tara, for this form of body by the Buddha, it is only the high level of the Bodhisattva who have achieved path and ground. They can meet the spiritual master in the form of either Manjusri or Tara, or etc. And then the next type of option for practitioners, if to meet the spiritual master in the form of Nirmanakaya, in the form, for example, the Buddha Shakyamuni. The Buddha Shakyamuni, as we know from the history and also from the text, the Buddha came this world in the shape of the Buddha, the Nirmanakaya Buddha, the Buddha Shakyamuni Buddha. For example, we know there is a halo, the light surrounding the Buddha Shakyamuni. This also a practitioners only those with the great merit. For those with the great merit, they can see a spiritual master in the form of the Shakyamuni Buddha directly. And for us now, even us now, we do not have the opportunity or the merit to see the spiritual master in the form of Shakyamuni Buddha.
Te ma yinba, da ya chi chi da shimi. Chi da shimi namba dunje kiwi shini dunje di je ngaranzo te ba chi tu mare, yi chi tu mare, sungju yang shu tu mare. Jesa da kan de ji se ngaranzo dawa. Ngaranzo dawa namba dunje ane de cha yu kin, kong do sa ya yu kin. Ane cha do sa bo da be nyumo gang da gang yin jang 상마 유게 나란조라 가레 유비나 디 유바낭신이 거랑 남바든지 하는 나란조 최송고여로 제가 어디 되게 기위신이 되게 안에 배지 균 유비네 균원에 많이 받이 삼당 거를 가르스는 남바데 나란조 다we 남바든지 해용도 소소지고 탐내바낭신 남고여로 어디 내가 손자 다 강기 슈바낭신 삼로 어디 뇌지 단제로 출로 주숨 가run지게 남바되면은 나란 선남 매배 왕기 제투고 말에 기단 시민 넘버 된제 용연은 이지다 대벌레 투고 말에 다 수수단 나와 되지 다 교인들도 통구도 되나야 교인이 나랑이 교인이 발레 가족에 배 라메 기위신이 교인 말에 삼배 된르게 로데 장니 아니 대봐야 패야다 아니 귤로 똑바게야다 아나 라메 연데 마루마루 통야다 교인 요리뇨 통야 되리더라.
So for the next option, the alternative that can happen, a practitioners, perhaps if the spiritual master comes in the form of, say, like a dog or a cat, then for this form of a spiritual master, what happens is that a practitioner will not generate faith, will not generate conviction, and cannot receive Dharma teaching if the spiritual master in that kind of form. So the question, in what form the spiritual masters come to us? And the answer is that the spiritual master will come to us in the form that resembling ourselves. It is in the form that more likely resembling ourselves, someone with attachment, someone with anger, someone who is pride, whatever kleshas that we ourselves own in our mind streams, the spiritual masters will come in that form. And only in that form, the spiritual master resembling ourselves, that we can receive teachings and explanations. We can receive advice and teaching explanations. And if we understand this fact, that the spiritual masters comes into us in the form that resembling ourselves, if we see any faults in the sight of the spiritual master, we must think that it is really not a real faults on the side of the masters, it's the faults of myself. Because the spiritual masters have already come to me in the form that resembling myself. So for us now condition, we cannot meet the spiritual master in the form of the three Buddha's body. It is only for the high level in the form of the Buddha Dharmakaya is not possible. In the form of the Sambhogaya Kaya is not possible. Do not have the merit. In the form of Nirmakaya, also not possible. We don't have the merit. For us to see the spiritual master in the form of the dog and the cats is not beneficial. We cannot receive any teaching from them. So it is in the form that resembling ourselves and ourselves that the spiritual master has come to us. And whenever we see any faults in the form of the spiritual master, we must remember clearly and strongly, it's not the fault on the part of the spiritual master, it's fault from our side. The spiritual master showing the fault for us is our side. Is this type of thinking that we must learn. First, we learn or study it, and then we reflect it, and then meditate it. This type of thinking, the way of seeing the spiritual master is exactly. By doing this, what happens after this is that the effect is that faith will arise, conviction will arise. What you have been initially seeing the faults of the master, it will be changed. We see more and more for the qualities of the spiritual masters. It's naturally happen. We see more and the qualities of that, and we see less of the faults in the spiritual master if we go through this part this way.
다 대다의 기회신이 되라야 다 유연등이 차내다 약수 중이나 도디게 나로라야 유연대 주창고를 해서 숨으래 다들 되려마 중이나 다 유연대 숨디로 안에 랑다 신이게는 신조지기 신라 삼조 당기지로 세디다 치마니기는 치마조 삼로 당기 랑다 기회신이 니기나는 기회신이디다 추가 돌아 유연대 채워 어든지 여배나다 기위신이다 만달래 연된들이 하나다 리고요리스 디송로
As for the qualification of the spiritual masters, there are certain qualities that must be fulfilled in the sight of the spiritual masters. Is stated on the text. The title in the Tibetan is called Dodekian, and the numbers of the qualification is 10. There are 10 qualifications of the spiritual masters. And explained there in the text, if we cannot find a spiritual master with the complete 10 qualification, then at the very least, we have to rely upon a spiritual master who have a 3 qualification. The 3 qualification between someone who among himself and others, he pay more attention to the others. He emphasize more to the welfare of others. Someone between this life and the next life, he emphasized more to the next life. As someone between us and this person must have more qualities than ourselves. So if we cannot find all 10 complete qualification, we should have at least 3 qualification.
나 라마 덴데지 먹었어요. 네 라마 데베 산제 샤제 투바나시 고에스 라비나 다들 용적으로 수수되고 나간다 여러. 다들 제가 고고 여비 나서로. 제랑이 라마데 산제 샤제 투바나시 고고 여비나 산제 샤제 투바나시 제약의 수수를 수남디 고고요레스. 수남디 매바이나 제랑 삼바삼마도 두두고 말해서. 배나 총첨부지 자기 뭐이나 총첨부지 자와 제발라 이 자약의 배샤 고라 마스 고라. 마스데 매바이나 총첨부자약의 삼로 땅바삼을 모두 되면도 자투고 말아. 배워더니 지고 지냐레스. 라마시야디 간르주 고그레스디 삼바 조디 라마라 라레요 말아. 조 수수라 라레레스로. 가담 공면 숨균을 열어. 라마 유엔데 체당 마치 뭐라마이 라라 라레스 오세디라. 라메 유엔데 체보 맵세야디 라메디 마레스 수술을 이지다 대바다 도서 첨보요나 릭데요래 거라. 오엔데
Once we have seen the qualification and this explanation up to this point, perhaps there are some people, or could be among you, could be anyone, there could be someone who thinks like this. Oh, for the spiritual master that resembles myself, maybe I do not need such masters. Perhaps I want a spiritual master in the form of the Sakyamuni Buddha. Is it okay if I want a spiritual master in the form of Sakyamuni Buddha? There could be someone who thinking like this, because anyhow, many types of person with many types of thinking. So let's just take this as example. So there is one being, and he said to himself or herself, "Oh, perhaps I can meet my spiritual master in the form of the Sakyamuni Buddha." This is a thinking. This is a wishing. And then for someone wishing like this, for the time being, if you are in this kind of a situation, you have to ask yourself, do you have the merit to see the Buddha Sakyamuni himself or not? Because it's the matter of merit. If you have the merit, then it's possible. But if you have the not have the merit, you can only wish you can have the Buddha as your master, but it's not necessarily happening. It's like a wishful thinking because you don't have the merit to do so. It's exactly the same in the situation when you want to do a big business. So for example, you want to engage yourself to become a big businessman. In order to be a big businessman, you have to have a capital. If you have the capital, you can do your business. But if you don't have the capital, you're only thinking about being a big businessman. It's the same like this. So for this reason, that is said in the Kadam Lamas, the great practitioners of the Kadampa tradition, the great Kadampa Lamas, the amount of the blessing that we could receive is not depending on the side of the spiritual masters. It's not about the qualities, whether huge or high quality, how many big or small the qualities on the side of the spiritual master is not depending on that. The amount of the blessing that we can receive depends on ourselves, meaning on our faith and our conviction.
다 쉰삼대 샤나다 요르니디 요로
Do you want to do it?
요르베
We have the session for
until 12.
until 12. Okay.
No.
No.
오케이 오케이 야다 야거든 저저 중립 봐주로
네.
다 덴데인 바송상 당아란저다 라마 기위 신이 세야 되래 다 오늘 당내 수시 捐 통야라보다 안에 연내시라 마 통야소르다 수수 레당보라 뒤로 용초그리 해서 나와 추가 수수 나와 탐제 이명해 봐요 말에 수수라 레게 온게 라만다 야가디 두낭 시기리 두거디 야게 낭 시기리 얘라 안에베 녀봐요 말에 랑게 나와라 녀봐네 봐서 뒤로
So when we are discussing quite a lot about the possibility of us seeing the force of the masters, the risk of seeing this and the way to see the spiritual master. Why? Because this is exactly our situation now. Because there is a huge risk, a large of tendency from our side to see the force on the side of the spiritual masters. So right now, if we try to assess ourselves, this is exactly our situation. We see many faults on the side of the spiritual masters and just a little bit of qualities. And the reason before this is that what is explained is there is no certainty regarding perception. So in the text, when you say that we cannot rely on the perception, this is correct because perception is determined by our own karma. So it's karma who has the saying. So based on the karma, then comes the perception, then comes what you feel about it. To the extent that something good, because of your karma and then who's coloring a perception, something good you can say is bad. The other way around, something which is actually bad, you can say this is something good. Why? Because your perception, our perception, is colored by the karma. So it's a good karma, then the perception become positive or good. On the other way around, it's the same. It's a bad karma, then it's coloring our perception. For this very reason, it said that we cannot rely on perception. The perception is unreliable.
디 페데 가르송물에 시디자마 티네진래야 동가 세보나로 세야지 빼지 손에 칙비 나자세 나자지 요리다 나자디 원기 미디기 안에 카르보티 세부 통야 요리다 얘나 이원 부디 요로 어디 오네 제는 코 카르보레로 동 카르보티 카르보레 오네 되나 카르보레디 미 칙비 나자이 유디기 따디자마 세부 통고요리 세부 통도 다 그 세부 레스 거라. 다 나저 세부 말에 라비네. 그 세부 레 세부 임바데 게 통게 두세 그 라고 해라다. 다 그 통구 두세 라바나시 원에 서버 레베스나다 서버 마르와 원에 저는 카르보레로와 때와디 나시 계위신이들 꽤 디다 디도니 통소 네 고송 세 거랑이 답에 데버레삼 증거로 이나야 되나 디마르 수수 통반나시 용마르 수수 레공을 담아나 능 시그리스디 빼다 되는 두스 잡으리
Section being unreliable, for which there is an analogy, we can understand based on an analogy, because for someone with liver sickness, for this person with this type of sickness, what is in natural is white in color. This person with the sickness will see it in the yellow color. So this is very common, someone with a liver condition. So what is naturally is everybody see it as white. Then this person with the sickness will say that it's yellow. And for white object, for example, a white conch. So white conch, when it's seen by a person with a liver condition, this person perceiving the object of white conch cells will say that this is yellow. And this person will will take an oath to say that he see it like that. He see it to be yellow in color. Because this is condition being affected by the sickness that he is having, the same like us. For example, this person, when we say that this is white conch shell, and then the person said that is a yellow conch shell. For this person, this is not a yellow conch shell. It's actually, in reality, it is white in color. The situation is like this. The same exactly apply when we see the condition, when we see the faults of the spiritual masters. A person can say, I see myself with my own eyes, such and faults. I hear myself with my own ears, such and such a fault. But then whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever you perceive, it depends on your perception, which then depends on determined by the karma. Then we say that it is unreliable. It's your own karma that speaking or coloring the perception, and based on the perception, you see or you hear the faults of the spiritual masters. In reality, it is not the faults on the side of the spiritual masters. It is your perception seeing the faults.
다 된대인 바 손자다 람르나나 송바나시 아나 라니 캐드지 경민들이 치르스야지 여러 캡산디 되그러면도 경되고 말했어다 남녀들로 말아줘 미순대신냐 캐드야 만도 경되기지요 말아 어디내인 바 손자다 수수 캐드고 여배나 캡산되고 여배나 캡산데 간데실렘 고그래 어디 중지디 안에 캡에 터되네다 라마 기위신이 딘주시야 돼 페미시를 개청보여라 대 야부지 중보에나 현다 연대 가야면은 딘도고 레스야지 요래다 간다 기위신이 딘주디 야부지 마중보에나 다베지 연대 간디지 중보에나야 딱 지다 연대 시부지 용야 가버리 라마 기위신이 딘주 야부 마중에나 안에 뭐 연대 게 사교디 안에 봐 안에 지도야라 연대 사부 기 못해야 되는데 내게 변 곡쟁만 보지 용고요래 라마 기위신이 딘주 야부 마중보에나 내게 봐 손자다 라마 기위신이 있어야 되다 딘주디 추신도 지야 돼 하장이 개청보를 해서 뒤숨으로
Within the Lamrim, on this part of the practice, there is one method that we can use for practicing relying upon the spiritual masters, because Lamrim says, what we wish is profit or advantage. What we do not wish is loss or disadvantage. So this is true. Any one of us, any one of you, what we wish is a profit, something beneficial for us. What we do not wish is loss or something that is causing us to having a loss. So by this main principle, this is the reason we only wish for the profit and do not wish for loss. Then we see the master as the Buddha himself. And seeing the master as the Buddha himself being the important qualities, because any qualities that we would like to achieve for ourselves depends on this practice of relying upon our spiritual masters. Without relying upon our spiritual masters, in general, we cannot achieve whatever qualities, worldly qualities. And then for the qualities that we have achieved in the past, it can decrease or deteriorate it. And in the future time, we cannot develop a new qualities. So whatever qualities that we would like to achieve, we would like to keep, it depends solely on the practice of relying upon our spiritual masters. And the basic principle is that we wish for profit, we do not wish for loss. And for this reason, for this principle, that we have to see the spiritual master as the Buddha himself. This is why this way of seeing the spiritual master is very important.
대답이다 라마디 빼나 말아줘 라마 니 요거리 차샤르와 라마 니기 나로네 라마 지글라 수세 대버 첨부르지다 지기 요버제 냐 라마 현다데야 냐지 대버 대장 매바냐 교명부 통용거리지 딘데기시 용초거로 왔다 이시 딘데 예베이나 다 말아줘 삼로 간르시 땅고리 시디삼바 다 라마 지 교명부 통이디 다 대제 대베시라 매거소리 차용거로 이 차뒤자마 다 고민들 간데 공부를 쓰디자마 수수 라마 대버 첨부 유기 라마지 여러 어디 아는 남바디 라마 대버 첨부 유기 라마디 임바 강시라 어디 라마 대버시라 메주기 라마디 어디 다가라 수수 대버시라 기마투역지 교망부 통역의 라마디 임발라 남바디 수수 대버시 유기 라마디 뭐 가자 남바 고민이나 다고 깔리 로자야 그래 대버게 대버 슈 체르도야 그 안에 동야디 묘르뉴도야 어디 곰데도 공부를 했어 지단데 내려 배낭한테 라마 산제 수는 대바시야디 기모데데 안에 배나 자자 두바다 다 말한데 라마도 좀 안에 뭐예메다네 뭐디 라마이 바카실라 남바데 산제 자자 두발로 두다윤디 안에 대버 체르다 안에 이지 체르도야 유르유무여로 그런다데
So we're taking the context or the practical example for someone who has, for example, 2 spiritual masters. So among the 2, there is one in particular, he has a great faith for the master. And for the other one, the faith is not as big as the first masters. And for the second one, the practitioner sees many faults. So it can happen like this. We just take into context and give an example. And within this example, how to think about it, how to practice relying upon the spiritual masters. So the way to do it, when we rely upon the spiritual masters, we will conduct what is called meditating on the guru or meditation on the spiritual masters. So for the second master that we have less faith and seeing many faults to them, there is a method for this, because on the meditation, during the meditation, we can just imagine the one that we feel less faith taking in the form of the one that we have greater faith. So the appearance in the form that we have great faith, but the nature can be the one that is we have less faith. So it's the matter of appearance and the nature. So we have 2 masters. For the appearance, we take the one that we have greater faith. The nature is the one we have lesser faith. So we meditate on the appearance of the one we have greater faith. This is correspond exactly when we practice meditating on the master as the Buddha. So when we practice relying upon the master and seeing the master as the Buddha, so this is our master and this is the Buddha. The appearance that we take in the form of the Buddha, the nature of the Buddha is the spiritual masters. For our condition, as we mentioned before, for now, even though we regard someone as our spiritual master, still we will see faults in these masters with this and that fault. But for the meditating, we regard them as the Buddha. He will take the form of the Buddha, the appearance of the Buddha, but the nature is the spiritual master himself.
대답이 라마디다 지당 라마 투 마니에버든도 중보이나 라메 공바다 계획 가질래 근다마다 지시기로와 아든도 중보이나 세거다 베나 라마라야 콩도 랑바서레 셰스마 슈이나 ana tende da lama tu nyeba ma junya tende ni zu tende jungba yina isi lama she shuba yima yina lama la gwanda shugure se tende sungu do wara nge nundu di da di shor sha sa ane gwanda se de ane ngara zu di gwang sui di shugu go isi ni zu tende yabu ma jungba che tende nya lama di shindu sheba yina kunyangele de saba yina ane da lama la ya gwanda shuya lama yo marwa 다 대탑시대 가려요레스디 sama 라마 신도 시 누구인데 남사들도 여비나 남사들이 뉴레야 하는 말아서 샤보 피구리스 보한다세디 샤보 피구리 제자들이 정말이나 안에 라마라 녀제스 거래 라마 투 마녀바 제베다 녀바디 녀바 쳐버려 왔다 디 참아 매바 차야 그래 어디지 요리스 디스고요.
During the course of practicing relying upon the spiritual masters, there could happen that we have committed faults by doing something that doesn't agree with the masters, or we do something that is a transgression of faults. And when this happens, what we can do is that for the things that consider to be of faults on our side, that we do not practice properly according to the wishes of the master or the advice of the masters, the activity that we could do in this type of situation is to offer apology. So we see the master and offer an apology, saying that apology is the fault on our side. We have made a mistake, such a mistakes, and so on. In the case that we have committed a fault, but then the master already passed away, the way to present our apology is that when the master who passed away with the possession of the master in the forms of clothing. So it's like it's a clothing or it's a robe, a clothing. And in front of this clothing, we should perform the purification in order to apologize for the mistake that we have conducted.
다 덴데인 바선자다 덴데기에다 라마직 된 사비 제려야 다 라마디기다 까신 두그레에서다 두두숭거와 다 까신 둡시야디다 던다디 가레스디 삼바 라메 숭바이나 숭제 탐정하라즈 둡투빙에바 요 말에서다디 산제 좀 내디기 따라랑 숭로와 원아까시 둡시야디 가레스디 삼바 사이 수수 라메 숭바디 둡투비나 안에 수수 두그레스 수수 두 마투바지이나 안에 대 두투 민두세야 라마라 슈그레스 와두 제비나 기시 두 마투지 라메 두숭바이나 수수 두비야 뉴바 메비나 라메 까단 게위 녀바디 용구 말했습니다.
When we practice the spiritual masters, relying upon the spiritual masters, once we have established the relationship, and then once that we have decided to do so and to practice well, so relying upon the spiritual masters by seeing him as the Buddha himself, also the Ramrim says, the instruction says that we have to do whatever the masters instructed. We have to do according to what he says, the master says. So whatever the master says, does it imply that we can do everything that the master says? Not necessarily, especially in the present condition, for all the things, the advice that given that the masters, it is our side that cannot perform all of those instructions. So for the ones that we do have the ability to do so, we must do so. And for the ones that we not able to do so, we should be able to convey to the master saying that I do not have the capability to do so, then we explain to the masters. So if in practicing the spiritual master upon spiritual masters, we must do with the best effort whatever being advised by the masters in our best condition or best effort. And for the ones that we cannot do, we should explain by saying that we cannot do so, and by doing so, there is no fault.
어디서 가리에 쓰기서 뭐 하나 마음이 마음을 힘이 되지라도 주는 빠직 되겠어.
By trying to rely upon a spiritual masters within our spiritual practice, perhaps you may ask, what is the sign of a good reliance upon a spiritual masters? For this, we can take a very practical example of the signs. So relying upon spiritual masters, meaning that we should meditate on the masters, and during that meditation, recollecting upon the masters, there could happen at the times when we feel that there is tears running down. So it's natural, we feel moved, so there are tears running down. And then there are strong feeling in particular. It's not a regular feeling, it's a strong feeling in particular. So when you say about the sign, that this can be one of the signs.
신직이 가리가 있으기만 마음 미남나는 제가 뒷라면 순진하게 이루어서요. 라면 까라고데 믹스해도 나게 이루어서요. what 여기 대체 정말 때는 솔직히 생각을 하듯이 앞으로 친구 쉬고 지내야 되잖아. 힘이 들어야 좀 빠지게 되어서요.
Another signs that perhaps that we can use to say that good reliance upon the spiritual masters, whenever someone having the dream of his spiritual masters. So anytime you have the dream of spiritual masters, say for example in the context of giving the Dharma teaching or giving an advice. So if this happen within your mind stream in the form of a dream, the Lama shows in your dream, in your mind, and in particular if you feel joy and delight, so we can say this is one of the other signs, the signs of relying upon a spiritual master, a good practice of spiritual masters.
다시 나때라 다시 망고지 여름에 이나야 말하고 무엇이 하고 투다비 남의 지날 쓰면 줘야 되다듯이 다르게 가려를 쓰기잖아. 나 호크칼라 말하고 다듯이 삼륜하고 취지야를 되고 친구이나. 만약에 차세야를 한번 되고 친구이나. 나도 같이 계획자와 치중 관계지 있는 이지야가 호크칼라 다듯이 미세게 토하는 제제
Another important aspect in reliance upon the spiritual masters is very important, is the aspect of blessing. So if one already engaged in the practice of relying on spiritual masters, blessing is very important. And for this, we can understand this directly in the form of direct blessing, because a direct blessing is a blessing that happens in the mind. It could be a very good sign of a good practice of reliance upon the spiritual masters, because in the good signs, when, for example, suddenly a good practitioner of the reliance upon spiritual masters, this person feels a strong urge, a strong encouragement for himself to practice the Dharma strongly. This happens suddenly, out of nowhere. Suddenly, you feel a strong desire to practice the Dharma, and a strong desire in the form, for example, suddenly you feel like you want to offer prostration. Suddenly, you feel that you want to do merit accumulation, anything that is positive, anything that is virtuous. Suddenly, you feel the urge, oh, I want to do so. The desire is strong. And why is this? Because there is the blessing of the spiritual masters. And this is the sign for someone who has a good practice of reliance upon the master. As for the form of the spiritual masters, please be reminded that this is not necessarily should be someone who is in high throne, a high lama. So we should not be limiting ourselves in thinking that a spiritual master must be a high lama, which sit in a high throne. This is not necessarily so. Also, a spiritual master must not be necessarily a bhikshu or ordained sangha members. This is not necessarily so. And then for the spiritual master, if you do not limit your mind, it can be anyone. For example, a spiritual master can also be one of your own children. It could be one of your spouses, if your spouse, your own spouse within your family. It could be your own parents, one of your parents or your parents. So this can be the form of spiritual master can take.
ဒီတဲ့လာမကြီးရရှိနေလို့ဆိုတာကျမ်းမာဆုံးတဲ့ရေလုံးခုချေဖို့လို့ဆိုတော့ဒါဒီဒီစံပါဒါရချီလာမချတာပဲကျေတဲ့ပဲရှယ်ရာကျင့်မှာသူဒီကြီးရရှယ်ရာမှာနေရေရရရှယ်ရာမှာနောက်ကျတဲ့ပြေပြေဒီဒီရနေလားဒါလာမကုန်ဒီစံပါဒါနေကဘင်းခရာဒီကိုကျူမှာဒီစပါတဝိရှိဝနာရှင်မောဒီခရာနီပါလားအနေနဘာတိလာမကြီးရှိချက်စားဘောဒုကုံကြနဲ့လောက်ကြတယ်
Yes. So in the practice of relying upon a spiritual masters, there is a great emphasis in explaining and then encouraging not to see the faults of the masters and to see only the qualities of the masters. This is highly emphasized, strongly emphasized, and heavily emphasized that we should not see the faults, only focus on the qualities. And then it happens in the context that if suppose someone already established a master-disciple relationship, but then what happens next is that toward these certain spiritual masters, he doesn't feel any particular feeling of faith. He doesn't feel any particular strong conviction. He see many faults and see less qualities. And then what to do? The relationship already established, then what to do if the situation happens to be like that? Then we comes down to the practice of meditation. So when meditating and recollecting, there is a method or technique to do it, to imply. It's by using for the temporary situation, since we do not feel certain high faith or high conviction, big conviction, then we imagine this person in the appearance of the person or the master that we have great faith. So we take the appearance of the master, the great faith, but the nature is the person that we already consider as a master, but less faith. So the technique is like this. By practicing this gradually, what happens, we will see the faith, we will generate the faith and see the qualities for the ones that initially we feel less faith. This is the technique that we can utilize within our meditation, and slowly, gradually, faith will arise, conviction will grow, cultivated, and we see more qualities. What initially we see less qualities. This is the method.
这这遇到这样的事情呢，他就是那么已经大概我写了，那就那么恰才就觉得，我对了呀，那几个我有呀啊，已经全部有呀的尺度，有家人别人老的就是来当我一毛经常，你别人的离婚，那我就跟那我差劲，那么恐怖人呀说的，包容他呀说的，那么的，现在这些下午的。
Yes. It is very important for us ourselves to be skillful within our practice of relying upon our spiritual masters. In particular, that we should be mindful about is not to force ourselves for something that we cannot do. We should not impose something that it's not within our reach, within our own capabilities. So do not force ourselves. Do not put something burden too heavy on ourselves. Because, for example, in the case when we already established a relationship, but then there is no great faith, it just so is less faith, and there is no high conviction or great conviction whatsoever. So in the process of generating the faith and the process of generating the conviction, this is a process for, first of all, do not force yourself. It's a process. Because if you force something that you are not capable to do just yet, what happens is that the effect is that you will just completely discard it or turn your back on that. We turn our back on something because being forced of something we are not capable to do. And then what happens next is that instead of seeing more and more qualities based on the methods that being said, the technique, what happens if we force ourselves, we only will see more and more faults. And from seeing more and more faults, what happens is that our klesha will grow. We become angry, we become cannot understand things maturely, etc., etc. Because we are forcing something that is not just yet to happen, because it's a gradual process, and in gradual process there is a method to do it. And by this, we can complete the explanation up to this point for this session.
She, Perpetuation Metatron, Realization Agent Body, Foundation to Mr. Body, Local Conduction, Nature Passion, Ida Guru Ratananda, Kamira Ratana.